To our session, our Charge at Home Roundtable session. This session is focused on barriers and solutions to EV charging in existing multifamily with our wonderful presenter, Rachel Korn of Go Power EV. A few quick notes for everyone here. The session is being recorded. It'll be stored on our website at chargeathome.org/events, where you can find our future Charge at Home Roundtable sessions, as well as the archived recordings of previous sessions. I'm going to encourage you to check it out. My name is Anna Guida. I work at Fourth. Charge at Home is a program of Fourth. So grateful you're all here today with us to learn. And yeah, we can get started. Let me talk to you a little bit more about Charge at Home before we jump right in. Charge at Home provides free electric vehicle guidance, tools, and support to multifamily decision makers and residents. So on our website, if you have a moment, you can poke around a little bit. We've got great market segmented installation toolkits. We have got a project builder tool that you can put unique inputs in about your property and outputs a cost estimation. Pagers, we have case studies, and we're developing new case studies. If that's something that you'd like to learn more about, reach out. And we have lots of other great resources as well as some resident resources. Before we move into Rachel's presentation, I want to quickly say if you have questions, please feel free to drop those in the chat. We're going to have Rachel's content, and then we'll move into a pre-submitted Q&A session. And then after that, we'll open the floor for live Q&A and technical assistance. Yeah. So introducing Rachel. Rachel Korn heads the go-to market functions at Go Power EV, including sales, marketing, and business development. She brings years of experience in scaling startups from the ground up. Prior to EVgo, Rachel led an auto tech company as a CEO, where she was responsible for developing the product, growing the team, and supercharging sales. Rachel brings years of technology experience from previous startups, as well as strategy experience from Bain & Company. Rachel has an MBA from Harvard Business School. Rachel, thank you so much. I will pass it off to you.
Thank you, Anna. So the topic of this presentation is EV charging in existing multifamily properties. In previous sessions, the Charge at Home group talked about new construction. We're talking about retrofits and existing. And why are we talking about this today? If you look at California, which is arguably the harbinger of where EV is going to go in the future, 20 to 25% of new car sales in California are electric. And that is driven by the fact that there are a lot more EV models out there and significantly lower price points. So this is for new and used. I recently looked at used prices, and there are plenty of models that are less than $20,000, less than 4-year-olds that are completely electric. So the used market is becoming more and more affordable to everybody, as well as the new. I believe strongly that despite some of the misgivings of the new administration and Tesla, this will continue, and California will lead the way, but the rest of the country will follow. So in California today, 1 out of 14 cars on the ground, on the properties, are electric vehicles. That is a large number. If you take these numbers, you project just a few of the next years forward, a 100-unit complex will likely have 25 electric vehicles. That is the situation we need to solve for in the near future. And in the medium future, there will probably be north of 50 in one of these complexes. Next slide. So the topic of today is, given this situation, how do we get to being able to provide widespread access to EV charging in existing multifamily? Let's start with how we've done it so far. So if you see the diagram on the bottom here, typically in multifamily properties, the solution has been solved by shared chargers. So these typically go up front in visitor parking by the pool. In the image here, you see a very large one. There are some smaller ones as well, but that's typically been the solution. So what are the problems with this as we go into widespread adoption? Number one, it's availability anxiety, meaning A resident will never know if they have access when they come back from work, typically during peak time, creates a lot of anxiety as to how I'm going to charge for the next day. In addition, it creates tension between residents. So your neighbor may be sitting there with their car and not leaving while you need access to charging. And the third one, the way properties have tried to solve some of these things is with idle fees, basically charging more money after the charge is completed. Again, very annoying to residents. So as we move into a more ubiquitous model, obviously this approach will not work. It'll break pretty quickly. It'll break at 20% of residents. It'll break at a quarter of residents needing access. What do we do then? So we all know there are significant challenges to getting widespread access in existing multifamily. I'm going to talk about the three major barriers to widespread access in multifamily. The first one, probably the most important, and most of you know about this, is there's just not enough electrical capacity entering the building. This typically requires grid upgrades, transformers, new service drops, etc. It results in significant delays. So we work with PG&E, for example, and their time to a new transformer is between 18 months and 2 years. So it can cause a significant delay and cost a lot of money. So in some cases, the utility may pay for a transformer upgrade, but in many cases they do not, then that falls on the property owner. The second challenge is that there's not a good way to charge residents for the electrical consumption. So unless the charger unit themselves come with a payment screen that takes a credit card, there is no good way to do it. So properties sometimes give away the power, charge a flat fee. Both results in significant issues for the property. The last one, obvious, is just it costs a lot of money, up to $20,000 a space, and most property owners are not in a position to make this kind of capital investment. So I'll talk a little bit about these challenges in details, these three, and some of the solutions that we see. So let's start with the insufficient load. The way to address this, number one, is to offer a low-powered solution. In multifamily, that is really the key to success. So let's start with L1. L1 satisfies 94+% of commuter needs in multifamily. This was a study done by Peninsula Clean Energy, where they studied the average commute of people and how much people in multifamily can get from charging on L1. And that's what they find, that since the average commute in the US is about 38 miles per day, L1 gets you 60 miles overnight, and it satisfies most people commute. So if the goal is to create widespread access, going with L1, meeting the needs of the daily commute is probably the way to go. Assuming that if the person needs to go on a weekend trip and do 250 miles in one day, they go to a supercharger in advance. But that's more of the exception than the rule. Another way that is critical to this is load management solutions. Load management provides the ability to connect many chargers at the same time and to manage them without existing the maximum load. So as many of you know, when a utility or AHJ is planning for EV charging, they ask the vendor or the contractor to do a load study. And the load study pretty much dictates the maximum amount of kilowatts that can be drawn by EV charging. By using load management software, one can actually connect a lot more chargers and then turn them on and off as to never exceed the load. There's an advanced solution to this called dynamic load management, which does it in real time. GoPower EV is working on this actively. And if any of you out there are interested in dynamic load management, we're happy to talk to you. We're looking for collaborators. Another solution that is really good is to incentivize people to charge in off-peak hours. Charging at night is a great behavior for multifamily because people leave their car parked in their parking spot anyway. So you have the advantage of 10 to 12 hours overnight that you can use for EV charging, and creating the right incentives in terms of pricing is critical here. In many utilities, you also have time of use rates that are lower overnight, so everybody benefits from this. Next. I just saw the comments of the question on 20 to 25 on the L1. We will address this. I have a little section on L1 before the Q&A, so I will address this. Okay, great. So billing solutions. What are we doing today and where are we going from here? As I mentioned briefly before, the solutions to the billing problem are sometimes properties charge a monthly flat fee. That pretty much makes nobody happy. The property ends up having to pay, and then the person with the Nissan Leaf is charging next to a Tesla Cybertruck and realizes that if both of them are paying the same, it doesn't make any sense. Uh, Units with screens and credit cards tend to be a little more expensive, but they're certainly a solution if they're affordable. Another thing the properties are doing is giving the power away. As long as you have 3 EVs on the property, that may work fine for you, but probably not more than that. Another one is that the property manager trues up the electrical usage at the end of the month. So um, in that case, they get the utility bill at the end of the month and kind of allocate to who did what. The challenge with that is that number one, it takes a lot of time and expertise from the property manager to be able to do that. And the second is that the residents who are charging at the point in time that they're charging don't actually know how much they're going to pay for that specific charge. So it doesn't encourage the right behavior. So in the ideal solution, residents pay for exactly what they consume, and they know, and there's price transparency up front. You know, how much is this session going to cost you, and how much will it cost you if you do it overnight. It also enables a revenue stream for the property because they may be able to charge a little extra and take that for themselves to help with the management. The solution also incentivize again, you can incentivize through it to use time of use rates. And finally, it leaves the property free of the responsibility of having to true it up. Capital investment, this is still a challenge where there are agencies and utilities and AHJs that subsidize it. That is great. And that is probably the first thing to do because we're not sure how long they're going to exist. So if you have one, go for it and take advantage of it now. Another option is to outsource the garage to a full service capital group. What these guys do is they take care of the capital up front and they make it up later with recurring fees, typically to the residents. So high-end properties, Class A properties, this can work really well because residents can actually carry the burden of the financing costs. But in other places, it doesn't make much sense. So those are the 3 challenges to multifamily. Next. I wanted to take you through 2 case studies of GoPower EV where we've addressed these challenges, and then I'll tell you a little bit about how we do it. So case number 1, this is University Terrace at Stanford faculty in Palo Alto, 112 condos. We installed EV access to 128 spaces. We did not upgrade any of the electrical because the solution is load managed and it's low powered. They paid $530 per space because this was subsidized by the city of Palo Alto. So CPAU covered 70% of the cost. So they were able to deal with the upfront costs with the great assistance of the CPAU and gave widespread access, 128 spaces, through low-powered solutions that we offer. Oh, let me just mention on the previous one that ChargePoint was there before with a few of these shared units up front that I discussed, and that worked really well for them as long as there were, 5, 6 EVs. As soon as they got to where they were today at 40 EVs, that solution broke down and they needed widespread access. Next, so another one, Frontera Bayview condominiums. We enabled 143 spaces. There are 95 condos there. Financially, again, this was supported by Peninsula Clean Energy, so it was 100% funded. They did not have to pay anything. Lucky for them. Again, we were able to put in so many spaces and give access to, almost 2 spaces to every person there with the aid of low-powered, powered managed solutions. Next. So I'm going to go through real briefly L1, L2, L3, and I can take some of the questions related to that. I'm sure many of you know about this. I won't take very long. I will take about 1 minute going through this. I'm almost at the end, so if you want to take this time to think about your questions and put them in the chat, this would be a great time. Otherwise, I'm just going to go through this as quickly as possible and leave some more questions for the Q&A. So L1 is available pretty much everywhere. It's similar to the regular 120-volt outlet. It's the least expensive solution out of everything in terms of both the hardware and the installation of it. It costs significantly less to install one of these. As I said before, it meets 94% of the charging needs. It is the lowest strain on the electrical system. And it's really the best for residential and workplace where people stay a lot of time. Gives you 50 to 60 miles overnight. Next, L2 requires a dedicated breaker and an outlet, so things get a little more complicated. It pulls more power. If you start using these simultaneously, they create a significant power draw. Overnight, these can add, 200 plus miles. So this is good for in the multifamily existing situation. This would be good for the shared model. Next, DC fast charging is really, really fast. When you're in a hurry, it's the most expensive, massive power draw, needs big electrical upgrades, good for destination charging. Next, okay, just a little bit about GoFower EV. I didn't want to make this a commercial, but 1 minute here. Our solution here is on the left. This is our hardware. It's a low power, powered managed solution. We have a low power L2 in the middle, and then L1s on the extremes. Both 2 cars can charge at the same time with this. It's a 20 amp solution, provides 60 to 150 miles overnight. When we designed this, we talked to property managers, and many of them expressed anxiety over, I don't know how many EVs I'm going to have, and yet I need to do this massive capital outlay right now. So we created a solution that future-proofs them, and that's what you see in the middle here, the Ready Base. So the Ready Base is a metallic base that one can install everywhere. The power port is the actual smart outlet. The power port sits on the Ready Base, and that's a simple 5-minute installation. So in a place like University Terraces, when we put in 128 spaces, and we had 40 EVs day one, the 40 EVs were equipped with the power port on the Ready Base, and the rest were just left with the Ready Base. And when more EVs are added to the property, we ship the power port to the property, and they install it on the Ready Base. Our solution is load managed, again, to avoid overloading the grid. On the right top, you see our LCU gateway, our local control gateway, that essentially pulls the cellular signal from the outside, brings it into a garage, and aids the and lets the units talk to each other. Um, we also, not in this picture, we install a submeter, and that solves the billing issue because we pay the utility bill directly to the utility. In turn, through the app, we charge the residents and we let them know in advance how much it's going to cost on the app, and we charge them with a credit card immediately. Um, just real quickly and how this looks in practice. So on the very, very bottom, you have the shared parking. So that's the shared model that I talked about before. You've got two EVs using one unit and then people waiting for it. On the top part is what our solution would look like. The yellows are EVs. So they are sitting next to a powered station, a power port. Two of them can charge with one. And then all the rest of the spaces are equipped with the base, the ready base, the aluminum base, and just waiting for new EVs to come. Next. Great. So I think that's it. Just in summary, I covered in retrofits and existing. What do you do? How do you prepare yourself for a situation of widespread access and ubiquity? Talked about the three challenges of insufficient power, billing, and costs. How we solve it at Go Power EV, and what other solutions are available. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rachel. It's an amazing presentation. Some great information. Some great questions have been coming through the chat related to what you've been sharing. So I'm excited to get to those. We are now going to move into the pre-submitted Q&A section. So some folks, when you were registering, submitted questions. If they were submitted within the last couple of days, we may have not gotten to them, but thank you for submitting your great questions. It gives us time to kind of triage those as a group and provide really a comprehensive support. So keep doing that when you register. And then any other questions, feel free to drop them in the chat and we'll get to those in a second. So let's keep going. Okay, so the first question that we're going to address today is, can you touch on the pros and cons of level 1 versus level 2 charging being installed at multifamily housing? My energy office is considering incentives for L1. So I'm going to invite Whit to come off mute and address this, and then of course, Rachel.
That's good. We made these slides so that they would be very thorough for anybody that wants to read or watch this after the fact. So apologies for all the words. But this is some of the high level stuff on pros and cons. Obviously, first things first, assigned parking versus first come, first served parking is a big difference. And for low level power, typically you're looking at wanting to install low level chargers at assigned parking spaces. There are methods for installing low power solutions into unassigned parking lots or parking lots that typically have no assignments for residents parking in them. But those configurations are very nuanced and often lead to low quality experiences for residents if done improperly, which is the reason why having assigned parking and dedicated chargers is so important for low power solutions. And with that said, going to that, typically you do need still a single circuit per outlet or charger, and this is one thing that I love about Go Power EV, where it has the multiple opportunities, multiple ports basically per circuit. The EV Ready base is really fantastic for that as a solution. So shout out to Go Power there. And it's also been shown that having access to a dedicated charger is just in general a more reliable experience, a more convenient experience for the residents. And at the end of the day, there is a value there to the residents that property owners and managers typically can find more lucrative there as well. Some of the cons is for the people that are driving long distances in their commutes, they can find lower power levels not enough. However, the vast majority, I think Rachel had a slide on there, it's like 94% or something like that. The vast majority of routes, the vast majority of people, the vast majority of the time are going to be more than happy with low level chargers. And the people that really aren't are typically going to be using a lot of their battery every single day into the 50, 100 miles a day, plus using your car for maybe power tools during the day or something like that. So the use cases for when low power isn't going to work for you do exist, but they're not your typical situation. And then I mentioned this already, low power solutions I have found, and I've talked to many other people, don't necessarily work very well for first come, first served parking configurations. And so being careful with installing the right solutions for the right situations, especially in garden style properties where there may not be assigned parking at all. That can get tricky. And then over to the level 2 network side, there potentially are fewer circuits needed. And this, again, there's a lot of the word theoretically in how I put this. Theoretically, level 2 networked solutions can serve more people, more EVs, just because they're higher power levels. And that also assumes a lot. That assumes that the turnover is regular. That assumes that people move their car after they're done charging. That assumes that, there's a lot of assumptions baked into that. So theoretically, a network level 2 charger can end up providing more power and serving more EV drivers. But in terms of per panel capacity, which is a weird metric, we can talk about that down the road if people really want to dig into it. But there can be situations where network level 2 solutions end up making a lot more sense. And then, back to cons, sorry. There's one more thing I wanted to talk about, is for network level 2 solutions, it doesn't work very well for situations where the parking lot is fully full, and when the ratio of EVs per charger becomes very high, you end up getting a pretty bad user experience, and people end up using public charging for what they rely on. And Rachel, would you add anything else to any of that? I know there's a lot here.
No, I thought that was a really good summary of it. Thank you.
And then next slide. This is a large question, so we split it up into, I think, 3 slides. Wanting to state a specific example of if your existing property could install, say, 1 or 2 networked level 2 chargers, or could install 4 times the number of level 1 chargers, it probably makes more sense to go with level 1 chargers. There obviously is a discussion of whether the parking configuration can be adjusted from unassigned to assigned. That is typically something that property management doesn't want to do. And if any property managers are on here, please put into the chat if you've run into situations like that. But the reliability for residents having even level 1 access, is that value is so high. To be able to just know you can plug in and have your expectations set for how much power you're going to get each night is critical. And as somebody who lives in an apartment who does not have home charging, level 1 charging would very much change my life. Additional considerations, again, ignoring the electrical capacity issue, which is the biggest issue. Some things to consider: secure parking, networked versus non-networked level 1 or low level 2 power solutions. That conversation is more complex than it might look like. And then remote monitoring and servicing, especially if the property owners and managers don't want to deal with any flat fee billing or having to deal with submetering. That solution and that setup, having a networked level 1 or low level 2 option, is pretty important. Then obviously access controls goes along with that conversation in secure parking. And we can leave future proofing to be a different conversation. Next slide. And then sort of key takeaways on considering incentives for level one. Access to reliable level one charging is typically more valuable than having, some amount of level two access, because that level of reliable access to charging will diminish as more and more EVs are at your property. And typically that is something that is going to happen very quickly over the next 5 to 10 years. California is an excellent example of what will happen to most places. And then incentive programs, based on the conversations I've had, should very much look to low power solutions as a priority if their goal is to get residents to be able to charge, then they really need to be looking at low power solutions, and potentially incentivizing the infrastructure behind the end unit. And we can talk a little bit more about that. I think there's a question in the chat that dives into that, especially around condos. Rachel, would you add anything more to the last two slides?
No, this is a good summary. I wanted to just introduce my colleague, Mike, and just ask him, hey, Mike, see if Mike has anything to add on the previous few slides.
The only thing I would throw in there is, we have seen if you put in enough level one, low power level two, even at unassigned parking, you still have that coverage. It just becomes an amount of quantity, right? You need to get enough spots in there that when people bring their EVs, and then having a system that is extensible. So say you cover an 100 unit complex, 20 or 25 spots today, having a plan to do the next 25, 50 spots, as the need grows. So, when you work with a vendor or a plan, a company to help plan this stuff, take a look at a very long-term vision. I oversee a lot of our installations, and I try to make sure we, bring in enough power that the property is good for the next 10 years, not the next two.
Well said.
Yeah.
Part
And
of
one other thing to add is that with low power, either the low power L2 or the L1s, we do see when you build it, they will come because it's so convenient and so accessible. You don't necessarily see that with shared solutions because people see them full, they see them break down. But when they see that they can have it in their own space, they will buy EVs.
Yeah.
One of the things I wanted to mention is for people that are really in the weeds, and for people that want to learn a lot more, we have some toolkits on our chargeathome.org website that really go into the what full build out can look like. And there's a lot of nuance there. I think that conversation is interesting to have, and often best done during the initial construction. But even for existing properties that are trying to not have to do a second phase of upgrades, it's really important to look at what your future proofing options are, working with your utility if you are going to do some sort of service upgrade or panel, making sure that you have scalable solutions. All right, next slide.
Yeah. Great to see you again, Mike. So the next question we have is, how do multifamily owners determine how many EV chargers are needed?
Yeah, so this is obviously a difficult question. The first one really is why are you in charge? Why is your property installing chargers? Is it because people are requesting chargers because there's a lot of EVs on the site? Is it code? Is it internal standards are changing at your company? Or are there incentives that you want to take advantage of? There's a bunch of different reasons to consider. How far out are you considering? Are you looking, just to solve the problems right now? Are you trying to solve tomorrow or 5 years from now's demand? Or are you looking to basically know that your system will be able to deal with all of the demand at your property for when all of the vehicles are EVs? And typically that last one is pretty difficult to get to at this point for existing properties. But those are some of the early questions to look at. What's the budget? There's a lot of constraints on how to determine if none of those are actual constraints in your decision making. Looking at the total demand, whether your parking configuration is assigned or unassigned, does give you a pretty good estimate for what your options are. Additionally, if you have extra parking spaces that you can utilize for communal or first come, first served solutions, that can work well. Obviously, I'm a big advocate for assigned parking, dedicated chargers. I think that has a better resident experience, but in a lot of properties, that's not feasible. And your electrical infrastructure available is usually your first limiting capacity or limiting factor. I think I've gone through most of this right here, but this is a question we get pretty regularly. How many chargers should we do? And part of that is, what infrastructure do you have? What are your goals? What are your cost constraints? What's your timeline? And what level of resident experience are you looking to get out of this? And after factoring all of that in, I mean, typically most vendors can give you a decent estimate of what you could consider. And if you have any questions for the Charge at Home team, feel free to send them in now or online anytime. We've got a contact page. Rachel or Mike, would you have anything to add there?
Sure. Let me start, Mike. 1 second. So in general, if you're just trying to understand what the demand is, so when we go into multifamily buildings, we see that there is significant underpenetration of EVs because there is no infrastructure. To just try to get a high level of demand, the best thing to do is to find out, what is the penetration of EVs in single family homes in your area. And that data is available through a few agencies. And if you know that, you have 2 EVs on the property, but everywhere around you, there's 20% EV penetration, then immediately you will have 20%. And then you look at the growth of new sales, and you can pretty much estimate what it's going to be like in the next 3 to 5 years. Mike, you have anything to add to that?
No, that was a really good way of saying, yeah, how many do you have now, and what's the adoption rate in your area? So it's and you're right, it's that catch up. I've said for years that the adoption in single family residential had a lot more to do with the fact that someone can park in their driveway and plug in than it had anything to do with income classification or where people were in that mode. It's that convenience factor, and when you bring even level 1 charging to multifamily, you bring that single family experience into multifamily, and adoption blossoms. So it's a great way of looking at it.
Awesome.
There's more details here. I typically recommend people to, as Rachel mentioned earlier about load management, I typically recommend people for dedicated charger configurations to not reduce, to never let the charging level get much below 2 kilowatts. And realistically, you could go lower than that, and I think it would still be okay. But there are user experience feedbacks that typically tell people people don't really want to go much below that without the expectation setting happening well before that point. The expectation setting, I think, is just so critical to this conversation. And if people are receiving lower power rates, which is very typical for good solutions, in my opinion, it's important to set those expectations early on. And if they have reliable access to charging, they're going to probably be pretty darn happy.
Yeah, I echo that. I've seen so many installations where they put in a half a dozen, 40 plus amp L2 chargers off a single 40 amp circuit. And, you get that expectation of, oh, you're going to grab a whole bunch of mileage in a short amount of time, but it never happens. And when you pull up to a L1 receptacle, a low power L2, you know exactly what you're going to get. And that expectation is key. So thanks for bringing it up.
So, do we have one more question, Anna?
This was the last of the pre-submitted questions. So this was the second slide part of that, which is a few more factors to weigh and the importance of signage and stuff like that. But we can move into the questions that have been coming in because we've been getting a lot of great ones. I can go ahead and read off the ones in order if that works for you. A few of them are pretty long, so I can redraw them in the chat as well. The first question came through from Barry. It looks like it was addressed by Mike, but I'll read it off real quick. My experience with L1 is that only 15 to 20 overnight have newer vehicle changed, upgrade their internal chargers. Thanks.
So I think Mike answered most of that, but it's important for anybody that doesn't drive an EV, your vehicle typically defaults to charging at 8 amps at 120 volts, which is just under 1,000 watts. It's 1 kilowatt, which is quite slow, especially if you're working with a lower efficiency vehicle like a truck, where you're really only getting about 2 miles per kilowatt hour. And of charging there, and 10 hours really is only going to get you 20, 25 miles, maybe less if you're typically doing those miles on the freeway. And so it's important to recognize that some solutions are not going to be as good for certain use cases. And as we see more and more suburban and even rural locations going electric, and more of those miles being rural highway miles, that level 1 is typically not going to work as well for those trucks in those solutions. However, in rural areas, you typically do see more people having access to non-multifamily setups. You have fewer multifamily properties, and so that issue is typically dealt with just by the property types that you see out there. But suburban areas certainly will run into this issue. And it's something to factor in. It makes that NEMA 620 outlet that GoPower have really important, because that can get you up to nearly 5 kilowatts, I think, or 4.8-ish. Maybe a little bit less than that if you run off 208 or 220 volts. But those solutions are really important for the people that have the really high demand. And yeah, so great question, Barry. And there's a lot of nuance there. Typically, vehicles can override that 8 amp standard setting to pull more amperage on a level 1 as well, which gets you up to about 1.2 kilowatts or a little bit more, maybe 1.4 or 1.6. Cool.
Awesome, Whit. Thank you so much. We have another great question that came in. Symbiote just dropped it in the chat again, but I'll read it off aloud for folks. I wanted to ask if you've worked with many communities that have deeded parking. Here in Colorado, a lot of external funding options like grants don't apply to deeded parking, which results in high-cost barriers for level 2. It also leads to additional logistical challenges, such as the development of charging policies or amendments to HOA regulations. Would love to hear if you've encountered similar situations and how you've navigated those issues.
Rachel or Mike, do you want to start with this one?
I can just tell you what go ahead. Did you want to?
No, go ahead, Mike.
I can tell you what we're seeing happening in the market space. So here where we are in the San Francisco Bay Area, the subsidies do cover, deeded parking as well. What I'm starting to see is that they're starting to say, hey, if you have deeded parking in your condo complex, if you're going to take our subsidy money, we want to see equitable charging throughout the entire community, aka something like at least 1 parking spot per residential unit that would have access once the project's done. So my big feedback is, this group, it, me, Rachel, all of us, anybody in here that has influence on subsidies and or policy, we need to educate the people that have the subsidies and grants that they need to think a little more broadly, because you're correct. If you say that, and once you do that, by the way, then a lot of the requirements for changing parking spots and making, the EV access, so forth and so on, can kind of go away because you're not doing public charging, you're doing private charging. So that's how we see it. You're in a little bit of a catch-22 because you want to get going and get stuff installed, but your subsidies aren't, meeting the needs of what your community needs. So I would highly encourage a long conversation with the people that write the grants. Anybody else?
I agree.
It's really a regulatory and incentive provider conversation, and it's one that I think we're finally starting to have.
Mhm.
I'm very happy with the more conversation around that. There's also a value proposition here for condos that is different than it is for apartments.
Mhm.
And that is something that incentive providers need to, frankly, determine their value set on what they're willing to incentivize versus what they're not. And whether they're not willing to incentivize private chargers, and whether they are willing to incentivize the infrastructure build out, are sort of two different conversations in my eyes. But I'm excited to see that those conversations are really starting to pick up. And actually, let's go to Jenna Compton, who's with ODOT. And Jenna, can you do a little intro of
Yeah,
who you are?
yeah, definitely. Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt, but Jenna Compton, I work for the Oregon Department of Transportation and I manage the community charging rebates program. And this is an issue that we persistently have, where folks with deeded spaces want to apply for a rebate program, but um, we don't want to limit access to some of the residents. So what we've done to maintain some flexibility with this unique scenario is to allow applicants to basically provide justification or reasoning to how they're going to make the chargers accessible to more than one resident or multiple residents with deeded spaces. So if their spaces are deeded, sometimes they will list answers like we're going to provide chargers with extended port cables like 25 feet or more. So we allow some flexibility for folks to kind of justify how they're going to provide more accessibility in those scenarios. Hopefully that's helpful.
Well, and to the person in Colorado that asked the question, what Jenna just said is really key, and that's, there are guidelines for subsidies, and sometimes there's flexibility. So make your case. Take your case to the subsidy and see if they will be flexible and authorize your subsidy based on your case.
Sometimes the people who created the subsidies and the regulations around them were not thinking multifamilies or condos specifically. They were thinking about broader workplace situations or, the first adopters of EV charging. So just getting them to understand that multifamily and condos are a slightly different animal could be the first step.
Yeah, that's the top line for getting people to think about different opportunities for different projects and different properties.
Another great comment from Jenna is just recognizing how L1 is great for micromobility options as well. So just another thought, which is, biking around is awesome. Another quick question, I want to make sure we're getting to these. Have you seen installations utilizing parking lot poles to pull power?
Parking lot, you mean streetlight poles?
Parking lot light poles. So like
Light poles.
in a parking-
Ours do not. No.
So I've heard of this. Typically, it's done when you're upgrading your parking light poles to a much more efficient setup, but the amount of power saved is really the key aspect there. Otherwise, it's just the same as running another circuit out to where a light pole is. So there's not necessarily a big opportunity there unless you're going from a really inefficient light system to a particularly efficient LED setup, which has happened over the last 2 decades in a lot of places. I'm blanking on the exact details, and I know there's a couple companies, EV charging vendors that are sort of really focusing on the right-of-way side of this conversation. But in parking lot light poles, especially, unless the conduit has already been run to that location, the amount of power you're able to get from upgrading a light pole is just not that much. I think I've seen like maybe 2 to 5 kilowatts. And for light poles that are typically between 4 different parking spaces, the ideal setup there would likely be a higher power setup. So it depends, but obviously there is an opportunity there, and an energy efficiency to find greater capacity, electrical capacity in your panels is a very good early step for a lot of existing properties that are looking to install chargers without having to do new panel installations or service upgrades.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Whit. We have another question here, and even though they're answered in the chat, I want to read them off. Are there resident concerns about using an outlet, bring your own charger solution?
We have not encountered any concerns. Many cars come with the plug-in cord. If not, you can get them on Amazon or any other place for relatively inexpensively. Um, People store them in the trunk, and that's it. In fact, the plus side of it, there's a few advantages to going this route. The first one is that people tend to keep them in better shape because they're theirs, as opposed to when it's connected, sometimes they drive over them, there's vandalism. The second is that it reduces maintenance costs significantly because the first things that break in a fully connected unit are the screen, the cord, and the plug. And once those things are down, one has to bring an electrician, a company, a vendor electrician to diagnose it and then bring them again to fix it. So engineering that out of the solution reduces maintenance significantly.
Awesome, thank you.
Bring your own cord solutions are becoming more common, and especially in situations where you have secure parking. It's, I would say, a top priority, I would say, for people to know about this technology, because it typically can be the lowest cost for installers, and property owners and managers, as well as being an excellent solution for residents, especially in apartments where having a portable level 2 charger is something that they may already have. They probably already have a portable level 1. Basically, all vehicles come with a portable level 1. Some come with a portable level 2 charger with a NEMA 1450 what's called end outlet port. So it's something to definitely know about and to factor in. It's not right for all solutions, but it can be a really, really good one, especially in dedicated configurations, assigned parking, dedicated charging configurations. And feel free to follow up with me on any more questions on some of the adapter conversation, because it's a good conversation. There are pros and cons to having to deal with the plug side adapters, or rather the outlet side adapters, ignoring the plug side adapters for now. That is a different conversation and an interesting one, especially as we get into the J3400 era, which is a new standard that looks like the Tesla standard, but is different. So maybe we'll talk a little bit more about that in a future webinar.
Yeah, for sure. And if any of these extra questions, like what just said, that we want to go deeper into, you can reach out to us, contact us right here at chargeathome.org/contact us. And we will get back to you. We can have meetings, conversations, put on trainings specific to a topic that you want to learn more about. So I think that's a great segue into the end of our presentation. Jenna just asked a great question. Jenna will capture that question and then we'll get back to you about that. We'll have someone from our team copy that question. Thank you. But yes, just appreciate everyone for being here today. Thank you so much to Rachel Korn, our presenter, and also to Mike for jumping on to support, and Whit as well. Our events team on our side as well. So thank you so much. We appreciate you all being here. We have these roundtable sessions once monthly. We will probably move to different kind of styles of presentations with some panels with multiple perspectives to kind of show how all folks involved in bringing EV charging multifamily properties interact. But we just appreciate you being here. So check out our website. We just dropped the events page in the chat, and reach out to us. We're here to support you all. So appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Take care.